No bank would lend it to me. I went to 12 banks. None of them would lend it to me. And so I started asking in the network of my friends, what do you know that I don't know? And somebody started telling me about some of the creative mortgaging companies. I contacted one, and the bank's rules meant that everything I borrowed made me less and less of a subject. I became less and less anybody they would want to lend to. The mortgage companies, every time I did so, and every year I carried it, I became more and more trustworthy. And so I started borrowing from them. And not too long ago, they sent me a letter and said I'm up to $2.5 million if I want to borrow that.
Your credit line.
My credit, because the ability to handle the rentals and the ability to carry it, the ability to succeed with that, brought up my value in their eyes. When I found that, it shifted my belief about the ability to borrow. And as I watch interest rates go down, I know there's a whole bunch of people out there who would like to get more than 1 or 2% interest. And there are. There's all kinds of people who want to lend. But that's my belief. And of course, my belief in that then gets me interested in how can I find them, and what kind of a business plan can I present to them to demonstrate credibility and believability so that I can borrow that kind of money.
Well, what about during the time that you couldn't get the money? How did you keep that abundance frame?
Well, I didn't have the abundance frame per se. I had another belief. I had the belief there's always an answer.
Yeah. Okay.
I had that. There's always an answer. I'm just not seeing it now, which led me to all the associates and friends, because the abundance was in them.
Yep.
The abundance was in them. They'll figure out a way. And some of this came through some study, but some of it came through some experience. And one experience was one of the things I was doing wrong, majorly wrong in the financial area, was I did not have a financial advisor. I did not have a personal CPA doing my books, because I was trying to save some money and do it myself. Or I would go and let H&R Block kind of look at it and pay them, $30. So, big mistake. So I go and I find Tim Hawkins. Tim Hawkins has now passed on, but I found him, and I took it in there, and he said, I said, what are you going to charge me? And he said, yeah, 150 to 200. And I just, 150, 200. Well, when he got done, he saved me thousands upon thousands upon thousands. He probably saved me 10,000 that first year. And so the next year I came back and he said, this is much more complex. It's going to be $400 or $500 this year. I said, fine. Good investment. That I don't need to know the tax laws. He went to the tax law seminars. So the core competency of doing tax returns, today I just gather the whole thing, take it in there, and I'm spending $1,000, $1,200 now on my tax returns. Good investment.
Yeah, I was thinking too. I work with companies looking for venture capital, and what a lot of companies get. I guess I would agree with that in the sense that they think, "What do I know?" Some of the entrepreneurs that have been working with me, what do I know? I know 1, 2, and 3. I don't know how to get there, and I'm thinking, yeah, but all these friends and other people do know how to get there. So in a sense, your wealth exists in your relationships.
Yeah.
Exists in these people who have networks and contacts and all sorts of things going on out there. It's incredible. So and then I'll get, I'll be working with a client and then I'll get stuck. But I think so much has been the same thing, is expecting that there'll be wealth out there in the form of knowledge that somebody else knows. So I'll call 2 or 3 friends who will refer to me, or they'll know, and pretty soon I got my answer. And I just have become more and more convinced of that. And I've even seen politicians and some people thinking, gee, I don't have a huge bank account to go out and run for office. But then other ones getting encouraged by their friends and say, hey, I know a group of my friends who've contributed to campaigns before. So it's like, you don't need the $5 million to run for office. All you need is to make your request known and inform your friends, and then allow that wealth to appear, so to speak.
Well, what about all the networks like that, as a resource?
Well,
Let your fingers in the wash.
yeah. Well, we can have breakfast tomorrow, you know.
So one of the sources of wealth for all of us is everybody here.
Yeah, exactly. In that sense.
The more you need money, the less you can get it, the more you pay for it. You want to grow your company, even internally, to prove to the venture capitalists you don't need them. Then you'll get it. Now, you grow your company by issuing key employee stock options to your key people, and now they're trapped with you the same way. You're going to keep growing. So you need to organize correctly, and eventually you may get to the point like In-N-Out, you don't need anybody. You're running on your own cash flow.
Mm-hmm. And before we have that cash flow, because that's the question over here, before we get to any there, then the question is the abundance or the scarcity frames of references. And that's why the question, how do you represent needing money? So what Bruce brought up about needing money, the key question is, when you say those words, how do you think about that? That is going to be so important. And if you recognize that it doesn't put you in the best state, then how do you shift? And how do you think? And sometimes it's a belief issue or a psychological type of issue. And then sometimes it's that resource. Where's resource? Well, some resources are inside, but then others are in these other areas where I invest. And being able to have that so we don't get stuck, because the worst thing is getting stuck and then getting into that scarcity mentality and not being able to move, and then drawing conclusions like, you can't do it. It can't be done. That's the worst thing.
Or you start looking for the next opportunity. You start looking for the next opportunity that maybe doesn't require so much, and it comes up constant looking. And then you're scattered and don't really get anywhere.
One of the questions when I do any coaching around this issue, I'm going to ask, who trusts you? Who trusts you? Who can you go to that they would put money on you? Because if a person hasn't built the kind of relationships that people trust them, then the first issue is, once again, one of the core competency is for me to become a trustworthy person. And as I do that, that is going to build so much in this whole process. And that's why get rich quick is so destructive, because people won't do that grounding. And so all the different forms of wealth around.
I was thinking like you are now for a while, and 6 months ago I didn't really see many opportunities for myself, and I thought, I was just complaining, and I didn't think, how am I going to make any money? I have no job, and I don't like doing service work and things like that. And then I stopped thinking like that, and I went out and I used the headshots that I have as an actor, and I sent them out to 12 agents that specialize in martial arts and athletes, and I got one call back, and I went and I met with that agent, and I signed with them for commercials, and then I had new headshots taken, and I started appreciating and accepting myself and having awe and sensing value in my abilities and my knowledge and everything else that I have to offer. And I got some new headshots taken, and I started sort of putting it out to the universe that I was ready to receive money and that I was ready to work. And then in the last 2 weeks, just before I came out here, my acting coach, a friend of his that's a producer, asked him if he knew any martial artists. And so he recommended me, and the guy called me, and then I did the work and got paid and worked on a commercial. And then just being here, I called up these friends, your network, these other people at a karate school that's out here, and I called them up and I just said, hey, can I come work out? Can I come take a class? And they said, yeah, and I came by, and then when I was there, the guy came up to me, the instructor, and he said, I just talked to the school owner, and he'd like to have you do a seminar. And I said, yeah, great, and I was ready for it. So now, that's this Friday, and it's a minimum $500 for an hour, and it's just sort of, I realized I was finally ready for it, and I finally felt the value of myself. So it's sort of, you can't predict, you can't necessarily know what's going to happen, but you have to be ready for it, and that's what the idea of the attitude of abundance is right on. So that's my example.
Okay.
Look at that proud grandmother.
She's been waiting for this for a long time.
Finally.
And use your NLP techniques on that branch on that bank manager. Anchor him to you. Tell him the benefits of giving that money to you.
Okay, Jim, then we're going to take our break.
Yeah, there's a number of years ago when they had that petroleum
shortage in the late 70s. That cut down on the plastic availability. And I was working at Samsonite. There's a plant in Mexico. And usually they got their plastics in Mexico, but they were cut off. So Juan, one of the owners, came up here to negotiate with Denver because they had a contract for it. And so he was talking, and he'll go on and on. Anyhow, he said, okay, now we've got that, you've got the material that we need. He says, now let's talk about price. And, it wasn't even available in Mexico, but he was just that open that it was, it was beautiful, just the way he did it. It wasn't arm twisting or that. It was just, okay, now let's talk about price.
Okay. So does everybody have a sense of which one of these patterns you like to play around with and enrich your matrix, your wealth matrix, whether abundance or inside-out wealth? Okay. So what we're going to do, we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll take a 10-minute break, and then 3 or 4 minutes after that, we'll blow the whistle. Grab a partner, and just for 10 minutes, we will work on this, and then we'll be back here after that. So take a 10-minute break, and then do that. Grab it. If you were to define yourself as a risk embracer or risk avoidant, which side of this continuum, if we had a continuum about risk and attracted to risk and averted to risk, just generally in your personality, are you a risk taker? Do you embrace risk, or do you play it more cautiously? Where would you be on the scale if we had a scale from 0 to 10, high-level risk taker? And where would you be on a scale, a continuum of risk-taking, risk attraction, risk aversion? 8 toward attraction? Okay. Taking risks.
Stockbroker I talked to said I'm on the 0 scale, and I disagreed with him. I says, you're just trying to sell me. I believe in controlled growth, controlled risk. And I analyze all my choices. Okay,
so if you were to identify how much of a risk taker are you?
4.
4? Okay.
Make sure I know it's real.
Okay.
I'm on a 9 to 10.
Oh, way over there.
Yep.
Big risk taker.
Right. They classify me as an aggressive investor.
An aggressive investor. Okay.
Gambler.
I have some ideas about risk, though, that are, like, some people would call me an extreme risk taker. But all my risks are very calculated.
Okay.
And I believe that the essence of investing is finding opportunities that have you have the ability to produce well beyond average returns. And then the art of it is reducing your risk and keeping that return potential. It's all about risk to reward. If you can take big risk and make little rewards, it's not a good formula.
Okay.
But if you can turn that around and find ways of taking small risks to make huge rewards, that's the optic.
Okay. Where would the rest of you put yourself on a scale of risk, attracted to it and embracing of it, or having aversion to it and wanting to play it more cautiously? At the emotional level, the psychological level, where would you put yourself in terms of risk? 1. Okay.
And we were just talking now.
Just generally.
Financial risk or just
generally. Yeah, just as a risk taker.
It's context dependent.
Yeah. So if we've now talked about specific contexts, of course we're going to go to financial to talk a little bit about that. How much of a risk taker are you emotionally?
Oh, it could be different in things. Oh, yeah.
Okay. How much of a risk taker are you socially? To just take a risk socially in front of people, with people. How much of a risk taker are you there?
I'm a 9 and 10. I'll meet people. I don't mind joking with them.
Okay. So in terms of how much of a physical risk do you take? And maybe some extreme sports or something? Or do you like the more safer, cautious kind of risks? How many have done bungee jumping? You know, getting way over there. So risk, once again, one of these words is really a nominalization, and they can be risk at any level, so it's even multi-ordinal. And when we talk about risk and the subjective feelings of risk and financial risks or business risks or risks with partners, then the whole subject of risk and risk-taking, because part of being an entrepreneur is risk-taking, and as we talk about some of the skills for making money, making business, creating wealth, it involves risks, and yet the subjectivity is such that what is a great risk to one person is nothing to somebody else. If we think about risk, once upon a time, walking out in front of this hotel and crossing that street would have been really risky. But most of us wouldn't think of it as much of a risk. In fact, there would hardly be a street in the world that if we went to, that we would consider risky, because we would know how to navigate it. Because we could use our eyes and our ears, we could use our intelligence to watch and calculate speed or how much traffic or where to go that would be a safer place to cross. And so we wouldn't even think of it in terms of risk. That would not be our frame. Our frame would be, what we'd be talking and doing inside would be calculating skill versus the situation. And as we would make choices, it just wouldn't feel like much of a risk. So what Scott was talking about is part of how we do risk management. There's a whole field of risk management, and you can talk about risk management in many different areas. What's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
Marriage.
Okay. 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 Getting born. What other risks?
Survival training in Tokyo Bay in the military. It turned out to be real.
Okay. So, big risk. Other
Dropping
risks?
out of college to be an actor.
Okay. Big risk.
I guess buying a restaurant.
Okay, buying a restaurant. Okay.
Eating at one.
Eating at one. Especially Chris's.
I used to fly hang gliders for years, and I did some pretty physically risky things doing that.
Okay. Okay.
Turning down a huge salary to find my way in all this.
Turning down a huge salary to find your way in this.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Doing consulting work on the West Bank, Gaza, and Israel.
Okay.
And seriously, mine is leaving a very good job at a very well-known company to start my own business.
Okay. Leaving a good job to start your own. I was thinking you were going to say leaving the marriage.
We get on track, huh?
Okay.
Learning a backflip.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
same, head of a department at a university and just walking out and doing
Okay.
NLP instead, and people say he's crazy.
Okay. So several of you have done some really significant risks. How do you manage risk? The risk that you've taken, what were some of the resources that enabled you to navigate the risk? Because risk has that feeling of danger and threat, and then fight, flight, and then aggressive, passive. And when we manage risk well, we just walk through it and do it. So what are the resources that really help us to manage risk?
Preparation.
Okay, preparation. So let's make a list of some of the resources that help us, because this will be the key for risk management. So resources that assist you when you've made some tremendous risk and you've walked through it. So preparation. So knowledge.
Michael, you're not working off on a particular page or
No.
anything.
We will go to page 85, so if you want to use 85 in the back next to 85.
Self-confidence. Survive, you will survive.
Okay, self-confidence. Trust that I have survived and I will survive, so trust in survival and getting through it.
Analyzing what's the worst that could happen and can you survive the worst.
Okay, excellent. Analyze an analysis or analyzing the worst going ahead and in entertaining worst-case scenario and having contingency plans for the worst.
Luck.
Luck. Okay.
What about self-esteem?
Okay, self-esteem. Yeah, we want resources, things that we can do. Luck is one of those that's, we just sit around and wait for it.
Except the Irish.
Except for the Irish. All right, trust leprechauns.
Pray.
So let me get a couple.
Yeah, either talk to or read about people that have experienced something similar, or...
Okay, so that might go back to knowledge and preparation. It might be inspiration, to be inspired by someone who's walked through some kind of similar risk that you're going to take. So inspiration or knowledge.
Knowledge would be some of the skills or some of what to expect.
So as we develop skills, the skills to cross a road, and the knowledge of how traffic works. Except when you're in one of the English countries, if you're an American, and you go in there, and I just nearly been killed so many times trying to jog, and I cross over and I look at But Michelle was here a couple weeks ago, last week, and she just nearly got herself knocked over a couple times as she was going across looking. Talk about something in neurology. So deep in neurology when you learn to drive on the other side of the road. And every time I'm in Australia and I'm driving and I cross over and the traffic is coming, because you're on that side and it's coming that way and you're crossing, I still have this deep feeling in my neurology. Look that way. Of course, there's nobody looking. But those feelings come up. For me, they do.
Well, I'm a Brit, so I learned on the other side of the road, but it's easy for me to move. I mean, it's just very easy because I travel a lot.
Michelle learned 2 weeks ago to drive here. And as 2 weeks ago, she was having all those feelings in her body. Now, I'm sure a year, 2 years, it's going to be gone. But when you first do it, when you first do it, you got all those feelings.
Understudy successful people, maybe even to the extreme of going to work for them.
Okay, so understudy someone who knows how to handle a particular field.
Optimism.
Okay, optimism. That's going to be a key thing here. Our belief in that I can handle it and that the risk is worth it, and an optimistic attitude.
Open away from and moving towards.
Okay, so let's call that a propulsion system, both propulsed away from and toward.
You need both.
Yeah, and so that's what we mean by propulsion.
Having a circle of friends that you can, or business arrangement, but what I'm talking about is a power circle that you can really get good feedback from.
Okay.
And that you meet with them on a regular basis. They'll hold you accountable for it.
Okay. So people can be a great resource, whether we're understanding someone who really can do it, or just having support and someone to talk something out with. So that can help to manage risk.
Just do it despite your fears. Get out of your comfort zone.
Okay.
Just press ahead. It's only a fear.
Commitment.
Do it anyway. Face the fear. Face down the fear. If it is an unrealistic fear, or if it's a fear that we don't need to take counsel from, then we take that risk. So the woman who runs out of a burning house and discovers that one of her children is still in, the courage and the risk that she takes going in is driven by she's going to face that fear anyway. And so sometimes a larger vision and purpose that the risk is worth it regardless.
I think somebody mentioned earlier prayer. I would sort of kind of combine that with faith. In other words, what's your worldview out there? Do you believe that there's a greater benevolence in the world, that there's God, or someone who provides resources, gives resources, speaks to you, gives you intuitions and thoughts that, in addition to your own stuff, you're operating out of a dual power source, not a singular one.
Okay.
Outcome and intention.
Okay.
That's hard to say.
Okay. So a strong intention and being clear about what my intention is and what the outcome, the results I'm going for.
But that kind of go along with, or no?
paying attention to feedback is important.
Okay. So paying attention to feedback. As simple as crossing a road, just noticing what's going on and feedback at each and every moment is going to help us to manage a risk and learn to do that. Working in gymnastics and thinking about backflips and how we used to teach the children backflips. Do you know how they're taught? It's really a fascinating process.
Show us, please.
We actually use a harness, and we put a harness around them, and the gym instructor is holding that harness, and they're on the big trampoline. So they're bouncing and bouncing and bouncing, and then they learn to feel what it feels like moving through, and they're just totally protected all the way through with that harness. And so they practice it, they move it, they learn how to feel in space. And so they've got a support process system in place until they get the feel for how to do that. And then later on the trampoline, they can start doing it. And then as they develop strength and energy, they can run across a mat and do it, or they can stand still and do it. And of course, spotting them, I'd always get in there to spot them, they'd start, or sometimes they even go slow, and we just slowly move them through it. But that's support. So once again, kind of, whether it's friends or understudy or something like that, building a support system so that I go through the ropes, I do the drills until it is trained into neurology.
Along with all that is future pacing, to kind of future pacing, kind of visualize like what could happen, what's the different possibilities, and what would I do if this happened, and kind of sanity.
Okay.
A lot of people take risks because, well, if he can do it, I can do it.
Okay.
Like the bungee jumping.
So the inspiration of seeing an inspiring model, an inspiring model that calls us to it and raises our level of that's possible. That's a human possibility now. So we've made a whole list of risk management skills, tools, resources, and we could add some more things that and can certainly do that. But risk is something we can start to manage. It doesn't have to manage us. And it seems to me that's the main point. That if you get to a place and there's some nervousness, welcome that in, like every other emotion. Welcome that in. And then ask, what resource do I need to manage that risk so that I can make good, calculated, thoughtful risks? Because when you can do that, then it won't feel like a risk. It'll feel like an intelligent choice. So we can transform fear, apprehension, danger, risk. We can transform risk into intelligent choice. And with intelligent choice, then we have a level of confidence, and we can start measuring that level of confidence, the confidence to take action and do something, and then we have that freedom just to make it happen. So this would be a lot of the preparation and the management for risk. So on page 85, talking about meditating some bold, risk-taking feelings for ourselves. From the outside, the entrepreneurs look like and feel like a bold bunch, and some of them are very daring in that sense. They boldly go where nobody goes before. They have that sense of just go for it. They have the ability to not take counsel of fear, not spend time and get into loops around timidity, fearfulness, worry, apprehension, because those states can just work like a cancer, eating away at confidence and willingness to do something. So as we identify our key passions in life, or key passion for your wealth building, finding that passion, accessing that passion, and the little statement says, what if you begin to feel yourself drool? We really turn this thing up until we just start drooling, really wanting it. Or we can start to hear a growl for it. I want that. Mine. So that we feel that energy. And then, what does risk mean anyway? Since risk is so much in the eye of the beholder, how much risk are you willing to take on? And what kind of management can you bring to that risk? So that's number 3. This is the power matrix of resources. So step number 3 is let me bring resources from this power matrix. What risk management skills and resources do you have or that you need to have? And so I've just got a couple listed there. We have a lot more here. Probably one of the most important ones is the contingency plans. Being able to go to the worst case scenario, think it through, and create plan B, plan C, plan D. Because if you have a backup plan, a contingency plan, it can free us to go forward so that we can, if the worst happens, I can cope with that. I can handle that. And so going there. A lot of people who don't handle risk, they start to go there and they just, I'm not going to go there because they're afraid of it, or they think they're going to be negative thinking. And yet, the more they'll go there, create that those contingency plans, that can set us free for taking risks. So, this would be part of something I would build into a business plan. So you have your business plan, and you have some contingency plans. That would be part of that. So the risk management. The state is putting yourself into a state of passionate resolve and ferocity into that power zone, that power bubble, and to imagine just letting it loose, turning it loose, stepping out and crossing the street, stepping out and doing the thing that you want to do and saying yes to it and adding enough enthusiasm and courage and excitement to make that happen. I tossed in there the raw power of the Poonma induction from Richard Bandler. If you never read the Poonma induction, this is the Poonma induction. It's for timid people to create another kind of an attitude. And the attitude is essentially to imagine a tiger, a Poonma, and to step into the Poonma, the mountain lion, and to feel the claws pawing the ground, and to get that eye of the tiger, and to swell up until you're 50 feet big, and to look down at your client or that business deal, and to paw the ground, and to feel that roar. And of course, what it's designed to do is just to create some energy, some passion, some excitement, some go for it. And so that's the Poonma. There's some more. Yeah, your ass is mine.
In my experience, I find out when I try this on, there's still some objection inside, so I didn't really feel 100% like a big Poonma. Now with the matrix model, I'm so glad. I mean, it will be taken care of.
And that's partly why also the preparation work before you get there. If you just step into that, if you try to do that without some resources and some ways of managing, then it may be too much. And of course, that's the biggest criticism Richard has. That's just way too much. It's over the top.
When people come to my office at Wonder Agents, I have this used portrait of 3 tigers sitting there looking at them. It's very intimidating. I love it.
Probably should change the whole
and of course, the last step there is to texture boldness into it, so that we can, with courage and with some boldness, step forward. I like the distinction that Christine made between courage and boldness. It was you that talked about it's courage with action. It's now taking the action there, so that with all the plans that we do and the things that we're wanting to do, we can get ourselves to do that and to embrace whatever risk it is that we're setting out to do. So becoming a risk taker. Comments on that? How many risk management skills do you use now? And which ones do you need to add to your repertoire just to texture it so that it feels like just good, intelligent choice?
I look at a risk as a statue that you keep massaging and adjusting and manipulating and moving around and clarifying with other risks that you may want to take on.
Okay. So as you apply this in business, that's what we're talking about today, business wealth building, applying it socially, What risk management would enable you to take more risk socially, personally, interpersonally, and in other ways that you've held yourself back from something that is good, you'd like to do, you feel it pulling on you, and yet you keep holding back, so that we don't live in timidity and fear and apprehension, because those can be really corrosive type of feelings. Right?
Are we going to do it?
So, would you like to take a few minutes to do this one? To try this on? You know the process, so we really don't have to demonstrate it again. As you just identify some place where it feels risky, and what resource do you need? What's the passion that you want to express? What's the excitement? What do you want to do? What's your intention and outcome in that particular area? Always grounded in some area, and then come back to step number 2. There is how does it seem like a risk to you? What does that mean to you? What are you risking? Because you might just risk being embarrassed, and the answer to that may be give yourself permission to be embarrassed. You may be risking $100. Do you have permission to risk $100? Would that put you in poverty? How much what are you risking? And then as you start adding different kinds of resources to manage that risk, what resource do you need to manage that risk? Now, as you add that, texture that in, now are you ready for the go for it state? You can do the Poonman induction, or you can just crank up that go for it state, that courage state of taking action. Well, come back ferocious. How did that go? This morning we began by talking about our wealth matrix and defining what wealth means to us, and maybe your intention for creating wealth and becoming financially independent. And then the states, and you might want to think in terms of your wealth matrix and mastering your wealth matrix, the states that will serve you best in doing that, when you're negotiating, when you're creating, when you're doing customer service, when you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. What are your top 10 states for generating, creating wealth? And then as we make our wealth matrix more robust, so that our sense of self and our resources and our maps and beliefs about others and time and world, as we make this wealth matrix more and more robust, we start to master that so that we become the kind of person for whom attracting wealth, creating wealth, adding value, creating value, making our lives and other lives richer. Then the finances is really peripheral. It'll come, and we'll attract it. From there, we started talking about the pathway of wealth building and how that there are steps and stages in that wealth building process, and knowing what stage you're at and what's needed at each stage. Ending debt, becoming frugal is some of the first stages. And after that, really developing those core competencies and investing in ourselves and investing in our financial intelligence, investing in colleagues and networking and knowing how to create business and moving through that process. So where we have come now, it seems to me, I'll come back to this one, is to ask the question, what skills do you need to make this happen? Do you have the skills? Asking that question is a little different from asking about the states, the beliefs, the meanings. It's asking a very different question. Do you have the skills? This morning we started off with a SWOT analysis looking at strengths, the skills you do have, the competencies you do have, and the weaknesses. I'd like to revisit the weaknesses now. What weakness needs to be addressed, developed, play off of your strength to strengthen that weakness so the weakness doesn't sabotage? What skills do you need to develop so that in this pathway you can make things happen? Personally, I've decided I'm not going to develop the skill of artwork. I can hire artwork done. So with the Meta Detective game, I hired an artist to do that artwork because I've decided I don't need to develop the core competency or the skill of being a CPA. I can hire that. I can outsource that. But there are some skills that I've been working on. I'm continually working on selling, marketing. Those are skills. Negotiating. So there are skills that I know I need for me to walk through the process. It may be personal skills, skills of resilience, optimism. What skills do you need in order to build up your wealth matrix? And so what I want to do is to look at skill development. There was a page in yesterday's pages, page 78, skill development in the matrix. And we weren't able to get to it yesterday, so we'll do it today. Skill development in the matrix on page 78. If you identify a skill you want to develop, then that activity, that competency, what is it? What specifically is that? And as you identify that, now we can use the matrix to really develop that skill. So on page 78, you'll see at the very top, identify a skill that you may have in embryonic form, you may have in the beginning form, or it may be developed to a certain extent. What skill do you have or don't have that is necessary, that is required in order for you to do some of the things you want to do in the next month, in the rest of this year? What skill do you want to add to your repertoire of skills? And it could be very personal. It could be, I want to develop more emotional awareness, more emotional intelligence. I want to handle frustration or stress. It may be the skill of stress management, risk management. It could be any skill that we've mentioned. It could be skills that we haven't mentioned. But what skill? Does everybody have a skill you can identify at this time?
Administration, keeping track of what I'm doing.
Okay. So if you'll write that down, I'm just going to ask these questions, and you can start writing and working on this skill development even now. So if you pick out one, that'll be an important key. One skill that you want. Does everybody have one? Okay.
Organizational skills.
Okay, some organizational skills.
Cold calling.
Cold calling would be a skill. To be able to pick up the phone. Sales would be a skill.
Writing.
Okay. So as you identify that skill, the first thing is, how would you describe it? How do you represent that skill? What does that mean to you? What is cold calling or sales or writing copy or administrative skills or filing skills? What skill do you want to develop? How would you describe it? Because having a clear description of what you're talking about. So if you could make a definition of the skill and make it as empirical as possible, it is picking up the phone and calling someone I don't know and doing so in such a way that I feel excited and anticipating and warm and compassionate and can communicate my excitement and conveying a sense of curiosity and safety to the other person. Might be cold calling when you define it. So first of all, define it. In helping you define it, what would be some of the states that would just be absolutely necessary for me to do that? What would be some of the states that I would just have to what would be states that would support that activity? If it's administrative stuff, it might be the state of thinking in procedures, or thinking sequentially. So what would be the states that would enable you to do that activity? You might have 2 or 3 states, several different feeling states, emotional states, mental states. What would be some supporting meanings that I could give to that activity? How can I frame and look at that activity, interpret that activity, that skill, that competency in such a way that the meaning I give to it excites me, supports me, compels me, warms me up to want to do that, want to learn it more. In the meaning-making matrix, oftentimes we give meaning by giving metaphors. What metaphor would make it easier to move into that? It is like, and so finding a metaphor that helps, supports, that gives it some kind of significance. You may want to, in the meaning-making matrix, also give it a representation, a movie. It looks like, or it sounds like, or feels like. The movie I make in my mind of that. And here you might want to find a model to do the understudy. The person who can do this that really attracts me, they do it with such elegance or such exquisiteness or such beauty or such power. The person I know or could imagine that gives me a movie for my mind of a model, exemplar. If you're ready for the intention matrix, the reason why this is important to me is, my intent for doing this is, what I'm going to get from this skill is, and you may want to go up the ladder, and when I get that, my intent of getting that intent is, until you get a pretty good intention, a pretty high intention, a pretty powerful, a pretty compelling, a big enough why is that important to you. If at any time as you think about the state or the meaning or the intention, some of this comes back to give more definition, more clarity to what it is you're actually doing, you may want to come back and to say what I'm doing is and how I describe it is, because sometimes these meanings, these intentions, these states help to create more clarity about what it is I'm actually doing, and creating a more clear definition. Who do you need to be? The me for whom doing this, the me for whom doing this would be no problem is, the resourceful me who can pull this off would be, as you develop that skill, who will you become? How will that touch, influence, affect your self-definition, your self-identity, your self-confidence, your self-efficacy? So your self-matrix. The me that can pull that off is, and of course the resources. Resources that I can add to this. Other resources that will texture this and give it some qualities that will really make it powerful, elegant, profound, impactful, useful, practical, whatever the skill is. The resources that I can bring to this skill from other places. My maps and my understandings about others and how this skill will enhance them, bless them, give them, add value. What will this do for others, and how will others be enriched by it? And what will be the interaction? What will be the relationship? What will come out of that in terms of others? What beliefs would support you doing this to client, customer, friend, colleague? Your matrix of time is your matrix. When do you do this? How long do you do it? Where does this take you in your future? How often do you do it? What are the time element pieces that as you do this, it'll move you into your future, the time matrix. Let me have that there. And then, of course, your skill is in some particular area, in some particular world, and the influence that will have. Tomorrow I want to do this one again, and we'll do it with a different subject. This is kind of like new behavior generator, but I think it has a richer, fuller thing because we're bringing all of the matrices of our mind to a skill as we start thinking about how to generate or refine or enhance or empower some skill, something we actually do. that's going to serve us in this case, in our wealth creation. And of course, if you can do this with one skill, and then another, and then another, then another. So one intention I do from time to time, every time I find a skill, I build a matrix around that skill that's going to support me doing that skill.
What if you give us a little sample of how you would do that?
Okay.
Pick out something randomly, whatever you want, and show us how you would construct that.
Okay. If we take selling, a couple of people mentioned selling, and that's something that is so so important. Selling as an activity is, and we're all in sales, because we're all selling our ideas, our beliefs, ourselves. We sell ourselves when we make a friend, make a lover. So we're all in sales, but the meanings we may give to sales may really put us off, because we might have seen a hard case salesperson, and that's not for me. So what does it mean to me? When I started thinking about that, my first thought was, I'm not a salesperson, many years ago, and then as I gave it new meanings, selling means, and what I'm doing with this is influencing people with the things that excites me, that I believe has value. So as I give it that meaning, my intention is to find people who want and need and who will find value in what I have to offer. And there can be other meanings around that. So the movie I start playing in my mind is that in selling, the first thing I do is go find someone who needs this. And my belief is, one of the other beliefs in the meaning one, is that I don't have to sell anything. I just need to find people who want what I got. So my first step is selling is exploring, finding out somebody needs what I've got.
I just got a beautiful metaphor. Selling is like coaching someone who is not a client yet.
Selling is like coaching a person who's not a client yet.
Would that be like working for free?
Yeah.
So are you looking to build up this new matrix versus trying to dig into the other one? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like you've got these limiting things, but instead just something to play. Like, okay, that's gigantic. And what have you noticed from what do you notice from the old matrix once you build this new robust matrix?
Well, our belief in NLP is that we'll make the best choices if we have a map. If you don't have a map for the best choice, you can't make it. So we're just mapping out a really new choice.
This is great. This is great.
So as we map that, who do I become? I didn't mention this yesterday about Graham Richardson. Graham Richardson, who's one of our most effective coaches and very, very successful, the most successful coach I know anywhere. He said to the group one day, he said, I never thought of myself as a salesperson. And he said, I always thought I didn't like sales. Until one day his wife said, but Graham, people love buying from you. So he took that on. People love buying from me. And it's the power of language, it's the power of a frame to really reframe it. And the more he gave himself to that idea, people love buying from me, then it just changed his way of presenting and thinking about that. So who do you become? It may be in my matrix is I have something of value that people want, and I'm not ashamed to give them things they want and to make that offer. The resources that'll help me to sell, well, non-pressure, just exploration, curiosity, committed to not selling them something they don't need. So one of my beliefs is I don't want buyer's remorse, so I want to make sure that they really want it. And I also believe that when I don't sell them on something, they'll walk away being a great advocate of me when they find somebody who does want that. So all the different beliefs that will support that. Other people love to buy. I believe people love to. I love to buy. I don't like to be sold, but I love to buy. And I believe people love to buy, so I believe people are just waiting to buy, and I believe people want value. And I believe people want value added. So I'm just looking for those people who want value added. So that's how I would just map this on out with these facets. And as I do, then as I think about this activity, it allows me to go into the activity, to start the activity, to start exploring the activity, and to bring more and more refinement to it, finding a model, someone who does it and does it really well that I can model as an exemplar. So new skill development, using the matrix, gives us a way to map out really fully what it is, when it is, where it is, the states I need to be in, what it means to me, my intentions, and then how it affects me and all of me, so that I'm fully congruent with this behavior and aligned with that behavior.
So what have you noticed personally, like implementing this process with regards to different specific areas, like results-wise for you?
Well, just how easy it is to keep stepping into different things, taking things on, because then I'm taking it on and I'm not being incongruent with it, because it creates that. And if Tony Robbins is right, congruency, personal congruency is power. Then when I do something, and it's not that I'm just doing something, but really I'm welcoming it into my being. So it's an expression. And I get to do it in my style in such a way that is customized to myself, and it fits. Then it doesn't feel put on or fake. So utilizing this, it makes it fuller.
It's like bingo. It's like when you're saying that, and we're putting all these pieces. I look down at my paper and I see I've got something in every piece. I just wanted to get up and say, bingo!
I win.
Got it.
Okay.
They're all lined up, on the bingo card.
Okay.
Way to think outside the box.
So we'll revisit this again. I wanted to at least end today, because we've gone through some wealth building stuff, that there may be some skills that you'll need to develop, and building that competency so that you can do that. And so we'll come back and revisit this tomorrow, and as we do that, it'll give you a chance to really develop new skills and add that on. We're going to end tonight with an induction. We're going to go to a special place of value.